life don't bug him.
Why do you always smile when I play this song?
It's a great song, man. Bobby Womack.
Yeah. So
Harry Hippie.
Okay, now with Harry Hippie by Bobby Womack, is the only time you hear this song when you come in studio with me?
If I don't find it somewhere in my house, it's the only time I hear it.
Right. But this one in particular has always resonated with you, probably from your Flint, Michigan days, right?
No doubt about it.
Yeah, Bobby Womack, Harry Hippie. Give him 10 more seconds, Nordo.
Harry just float through life.
You played with Doc Rivers with the New York Knicks, right?
I didn't play with him. I played against him. I was in Chicago at that time.
Oh, you were okay.
Yeah.
So he was with the good Knicks teams with Patrick Ewing, right?
Yeah, they took us to, we beat them in the Eastern Conference Finals in 1993 in Game 6.
Now, so Doc is with the Knicks. Doc, super pesky, Double T with MJ, Scottie Pippen, Horace Grant, and the like with Chicago. On the death of Kobe Bryant, Doc Rivers, now coach of the LA Clippers, he reacted this way.
I don't know. I just don't have a lot to say. The news is just devastating to everybody who knew him, known him a long time. And, he means a lot to me, obviously. He was such a great opponent, It's what you want in sports. He had that DNA that very few athletes can ever have. The Tiger Woods and the Michael Jordans. It's funny. I was getting to know him more since he retired. This is a tough one. I don't. We have to go play. The news is just so devastating for Vanessa and his family, and there's just so many people he touched. It's looking at my young players and seeing how emotional they are. They didn't even know him, and it just tells you how far his reach was. So, this is just shocking news for all of us. And sorry, I don't have a lot to say. I just can't. I have to go talk to a team before a game and tell them to play a game.
So, Doc Rivers discussing Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, 7 others die in a helicopter crash. First thing I think of when I see you, Double T, how are your kids? How's the family? The boys are 9 and 10 years of age, both into sports. How are the kids?
They're good. They're good. They're finding their way, and they're beginning to figure out, the things they like to do and some of the things they don't like to do. They ask a bunch of questions now as they continue to grow up, as boys, hoping to be young men at some point in time. And I'm hoping that along the way that, their mother and I will be able to give them some of the answers to their questions, but also put them on the right track to success.
Life, one of the many common threads we've had 9 to noon today, because with what we're calling the Kobe Covenant, like I put on Twitter or said early in the show, is that Nordo and I, whether it's celebrating basketball greatness, handling, even if you couldn't care less about Kobe Bryant or anybody involved in this story, the nature of sudden death and handling that, parents, sisters, brothers, whole thing. There are just so many asides to this that we're just going to talk until we're done talking about it. And it hasn't stopped, and it continues with you in studio now. So with Kobe Bryant, his 13-year-old daughter, seven others dead in that helicopter crash, when that news emerged yesterday, what'd you think, and what do you think now?
Well, it was shocking because I was headed to the Gophers basketball game yesterday, and this gentleman very, very well. He sent me a text message Kevin Warren.
Yeah.
CEO of the former CEO of the Minnesota Vikings, now Big Ten commissioner, sends me a text message and said, "Sad news. Did you hear the story about Kobe Bryant?" And at the time, I hadn't heard it, and I had to pull over, to make sure that I wouldn't run off the road.
Yeah. Process it right.
Yeah. Once I saw the text message, and it was shocking for a lot of people, especially in the basketball world, or people who became fans of Kobe Bryant, because this was not the story that most of us expected to hear on Sunday afternoon.
Right. And 41 years of age, 13-year-old daughter, there with again, the perspective being to each, it's up to the individual to draw their own perspective.
That's true.
With whatever they want to look at with this tragic situation. But, when you put into it what he put into it for as long as he did, 20 years in the NBA, and this can go for those listening now who aren't in the NBA, NHL, NFL, or Major League Baseball, but they are putting a lot into their careers. Maybe looking at it like, philosophically speaking, you can fill your pockets, but are you emptying your soul?
It's true.
You put a lot into it, and things get put on the back burner, the proverbial back burner, and that could be family, and that could be marriage, and that could be kids. So then you do it a certain way where you leave it on your terms. You're still relatively young, and you have these 4 kids, including this 13-year-old basketball playing daughter. And like in the second part, you look at it like, wow, did I sacrifice a lot? I was potentially in some really bad situations, made a lot of money, prestige, regrets, positivity, stuff like that.
All that stuff comes with it.
But now, here we go. I'm 30-some-odd years of age, 41 as of yesterday, and I got these 4 kids. The oldest is 13, and the second part of it is going to be more rewarding than the first part of it in different ways. And now it's gone. It's just gone,
Yeah, I mean, it shows you how fragile life is. And I've spoken to a lot of people over the last, 20, 24, 36 hours. And the one question that I've gotten, throughout this time is that, how are you going to look at Kobe Bryant going forward? I said, the only thing I can do at this time is to celebrate the life of Kobe Bryant. And for sure, people are going to grieve differently. His family, I feel for them for sure, because it's a sudden loss. But for me, as a guy who was a part of that fraternity and spent some time with Kobe Bryant when he was young, when I was broadcasting for the Wolves, and every time we made a trip out to L.A., he and I would sit down and have a chat. And I remember one of the few times I ever wore my championship ring. And he came over to me and he called me Mr. Tucker. I said, "You don't have to call me Mr. Tucker. You can call me Trent." And he says, "One of these days I'm going to get one of those."
Yeah.
I said, you just continue to do what you're doing. You're going to have more than one of these, okay? Yeah. And he was delightful to talk to, because we connected on a basketball standpoint. And he would ask me questions, about Michael Jordan and Scottie Pippen, and how those teams all came together, and what it was like to play for someone like Phil Jackson. And at that time, Phil Jackson hadn't gotten to the LA Lakers, and how all this stuff came together, and how all the pieces would fit to the puzzle. So you could tell from a mental standpoint, he was a student of the game, and he wanted to soak up as much knowledge as he could to put himself to become the best.
And I mentioned that earlier, and you know more about this guy than I do, and I've known the name forever. But clearly Kobe was raised as a scholar of the game.
Yes.
The way I put it was, he saw basketball, specifically defensively, as a 9-time first-team All-NBA defense, like Peyton Manning and or Tom Brady see defense.
Yeah.
Like the way they look at a defense in the biggest of spots. Joe Jelly Bean Bryant, his father. Jelly Bean's final year in the NBA was your first year in the NBA.
Right.
Like 92?
Uh-huh.
Like 92.
No, well, I played against his father like in 82.
In 80? Oh.
Yeah, see, my first year in the league was 82.
Oh, 82.
Yeah.
What was his final year? Okay, so you played against Jelly Bean Bryant.
I played against Jelly Bean Bryant.
Wow.
I did, yeah.
Like, for whom did he play, and what was he like?
He was playing for the 76ers.
Okay.
He was playing with Dr. J, Moses Malone, Andrew, Tony, Maurice Cheeks, and Bobby Jones, and that group.
Okay, so you had World B. Free, Caldwell Jones, Daryl Dawkins, Bobby Jones, one of the great underrated on-ball defenders in the history of the NBA.
For sure, no doubt.
Billy Cunningham was the coach. They run into the Washington Bullets with Wes Unseld, Bobby Dandridge, Kevin Porter, and Elvin Hayes, and Dick Motta's like operating over till the fat lady sings. And Washington came back and beat Dr. J.
Yeah.
So after that, though, the next Sixers run with Moses Malone and the Boston Strangler, was that Andrew Toney, the Boston Strangler?
Yes, he was.
Right.
Yeah.
And so Jelly Bean Bryant was on that team.
Yeah, see, I played against Jelly Bean for a few years.
Whoa.
And, I didn't know him well. At that time, I was very lucky when I came into the league to have some great mentors. And my first mentor was Dr. J. And to sit down and have an opportunity, to visit, with a guy that many people at that time considered to be the greatest basketball player. And so many people idolized him for what he did off the court as well.
Yeah.
And to be a 21-year-old kid having the chance to sit down and talk to Dr. J, that was very special.
Yeah, see, and back in the day, Flint, Michigan, for Double T, you talk about Dr. J. Nordo and I were talking about this earlier. Nordo's 35. So, I mean, granted, 9 to noon sees sports through the eyes of a 13-year-old still.
Yes.
And we consider that the charm. If you don't, God bless all of us. But like Nordo growing up in Mankato watching basketball, that's prime Kobe.
Right.
So it's like Kobe wanted to be like Mike. Nordo and everybody else wanted to be like Kobe. For me in the mid-'80s, specifically playing basketball and tennis, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, George Gervin, John McEnroe.
Right.
Those were like the 4 posters that were on my wall. So when you were growing up, like if you had sports posters in your room of people you wanted to be, who were they?
Dr. J. But my 2 all-time favorite basketball players, Walt Frazier and Sam Jones. And they say, why Sam Jones? Because the Boston Celtics during that time, everyone talked about Bob Cousy, John Havlicek, and Bill Russell.
Yeah.
But no one talked about Sam Jones. And he was perhaps one of the most prolific, scorers on that team during that time. And I can remember during the playoff game, no 3-point shot. And Sam Jones went out and put up 51 for the Boston Celtics.
Come on.
Yeah.
So it's like the current Wolves. Everybody talks about Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Jarrett Culver. They always forget Noah Vonleh.
Yeah.
The new age Sam Jones.
Right. And Sam Jones was like, he was the one guy, that had not only had a pretty jump shot, but he could use that glass.
Yeah.
And if you talk to some of the old school guys who came before me, and Truck Robinson now was one of my teammates and a big mentor to me as well.
Leonard Truck Robinson.
Yeah, and he and I talk all the time. And he said he learned the bank shot from Sam Jones.
Right.
Yeah.
So Sam Jones and Truck Robinson were Tim Duncan before Tim Duncan was Tim Duncan.
No doubt about it.
Using the backboard.
See, by having 3 older brothers, and growing up in Flint, Michigan, we all migrated from North Carolina up to Michigan. And one of my oldest brothers, who's passed away now, he went to Fairfield State down in North Carolina, all black college, and he played against Earl Monroe during that time.
Oh, yeah.
He was at Winston-Salem.
Baltimore Bullets?
Yeah, he said that back then, they played against, Winston-Salem.
Yeah.
Earl Monroe walked into the gym and dropped 60.
The Pearl.
Yeah.
Why'd they call him the Pearl? Because of his spin?
Yes.
His spin move,
Yeah,
right?
because he could do so much with the basketball at that time.
Yeah. Double T in studio. He won a ring with Michael Jordan and played with Michael Jordan. And as we mentioned an hour ago, Kobe Bryant always wanted to be like Mike. I'm going to mix that into the conversation with the professor of hoopology, Double T, around the corner. Celebrate the greatness and move on. Now, loving the NBA the way I do, and the way I have, specifically the way I have, it's like Michael Jordan, your former teammate, okay, spin move, baseline fall away, tongue out, just things outside of all of the 40-point games and just outside of a lot of the obvious things, there were subtleties to Michael Jordan's game, which were his. So Kobe Bryant comes into it, drafted by the Hornets, traded to the Lakers from Lower Merion High School. And there was a time I felt he so wanted to be like Mike that he worked as probably under the cover of darkness, emulating the spin move, the fall-away jumper, and there were times his tongue would come out early in his career because he wanted to be like Mike. Did you see it that way?
And also his speech when he would talk to the media.
Really?
You know, anyone that was around Michael Jordan, and if Kobe Bryant had a chance to talk to that individual, you know, he wanted to find out as much as he could about Michael Jordan. And I had the great fortunes at the end of my career, you know, to play with who I believe is the greatest basketball player ever. And I saw that coming, I think, about in his third year. I was with the Knicks, and it was opening night in the Garden, and Michael Jordan came to town. You know, the place is buzzing. New York City is rocking. Broadway's alive because MJ's in town.
All right.
And back then, the game was a little bit more physical, where you could, you know, knock guys. Yeah, I just say a little bit, you know, but you could hand check and knock guys around.
Yeah.
And I mean, we pounded him, you know, with Charles Oakley and Patrick Ewing time and time again. And he still scored 50 points.
Wow.
I said, this is the greatest basketball player I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I mean, see, because it wasn't like it was a blowout game. I mean, he got 50 points in a close game, and his team needed him to get those 50 points to win. And we did everything in our power to slow this guy down.
Yeah.
And we could not stop him. So playing against him, it was always fun to play against him. But when I was able to get up close enough to see him every day, then you really saw the true greatness of Michael Jordan.
See, Double T, that's why 9 to Noon never has the conversation of, and this would be a day to do it, where the late Kobe Bryant, where does one put him in the pantheon of greatness all time in the history of the NBA? I don't, and we don't do that, because unless you played, but unless you lived and closely followed what it was like in the 80s and how physical the game was, how the rules were dramatically different, how deep the level of competition was, which is a trump card for me, then you can't appreciate truly what Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, into Michael Jordan, Isaiah Thomas, Dr. J, you know, even Gary Payton and Sean Kemp when they started, then John Stockton and Karl Malone for Utah. You can't. It's impossible to have that conversation because there are just too many statistically sound facets. Yes, LeBron James is an unbelievably great player, 8-category player if he blocks a shot a game. You know, but, I mean, honestly, unless Michael at his peak played one-on-one with LeBron at his peak, who would ever know who the better player is, you know?
Well, if the one thing that separates certain players over time is their mental approach to the game. And when you look at Kobe Bryant's mental approach, you know, he was all about getting better as a player.
Yeah.
He was all about, you know, chasing that ghost, number 23. He wanted to put himself in that stratosphere because he felt like that if he could get there, he could put his franchise in a situation where they could become a champion once again. It's a lot of pressure. It's big-time burden on your shoulders to carry on a nightly basis. But that's why only so few guys, in whatever sport they play, can rise to that level. You know, the mental approach, but also you have to have a certain amount of talent. And every single day, you know, watching Michael Jordan up close, there are a lot of guys who I played with who worked hard, and they gave everything they could give. But from a competitive standpoint, a guy who was driven to be the best on a daily basis, you know, to me, there was no one better than Michael Jordan at doing that.